Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. And this is going to be confusing today because we've got another Kevin as a guest.
Yeah, I've got to say he's quite handsome. He's got more hair than you, Kevin, and me.
That's not difficult.
He is called Kevin Brent, runs a business called BizSmart in the Midlands. You can tell us where in a minute, Kevin. And all I would like to say is welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast.
Thank you very much indeed for having me on as a guest. I'm delighted to be here.
So whereabouts, you are in the Midlands somewhere, but whereabouts are you?
Yeah, just North Worcestershire, just south of Birmingham, on a range of hills called the Lickey Hills is where I live.
Wow.
Ah, very nice. Where the Lickey Incline used to be.
Right, yeah.
Well, you'll have to, is that a running thing or a bike thing? Or
It's a famous railway incline. It slowed the trains down going into Birmingham.
I should have guessed Kevin's a railway nut. So I
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course we've got the steam railway not far from where we are as well. So very good.
It's an affluent sort of southern Birmingham area, but your focus in life is to help businesses when they're intent on scaling up their businesses. So why don't we start by saying, how did you get into all of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I got a long and varied background doing all sorts of stuff. I've had the big corporate career. I actually started off in the RAF as a pilot. Had all the big corporate career. Went off, did an MBA, so did all the theoretical stuff. Joined a management consultancy firms, worked with big companies, doing all of that consulting, and then started setting up some of my own businesses. And along the way, I built my own house and thought, you know what. This building a business, lark, is not as easy as people think it is when they start.
No, I've got to say, with the MBA and management consultancy, etc., you're almost like a compote of Kevin and I in a way. I mean, we've trod similar paths.
I've done the build your own house bit as well, Graham.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, but we're not talking a house for the rabbits in your garden, Kevin. I mean, it's a proper house.
It's got to be bigger than that, has it?
Yeah. No, so, it's amazing that. I mean, how long ago did you build? Is it the house that you're living in now?
It is. Yes, we built it with in mind of living here forever, if you like. Started building it in 2004, 2005, something like that. Took pretty much 3 years to finish it. Although, if you ask my wife, I think she'd probably say it's still not finished. But yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Well, no, I the other thing about talking to, if you're watching on video, then eventually we'll publish this onto YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to see behind Kevin Brent. You'll be able to see a little book there called called the Entrepreneurial Scale Up System. So bringing us right up to date, that's the thing that you're here to talk about, this idea of scaling up and a system. So hopefully you've got a few ideas for our listeners who are intent on scaling up their own businesses, maybe some of the things that you can help them with.
Certainly, that would be the aim, and yes, the book is a culmination of working with business owners, and as you've sort of said, my composite of experiences over the years. But we've been working with owner managers of small and medium sized businesses for about 10 years. In fact, we've just had our 10th year in the business.
Wow, that's good. That is good. And so, what you've learned from that then. If you had to sort of say, right, you've only got half a minute to explain that. If you had to sort of summarize those things that you've learnt, what would you say they are?
Well, I think there's a lot of challenges as to why we don't scale. At the end of the day, they come down to making great decisions on a consistent basis, and how do we do that? And we kind of synthesize that down to the sort of key things that we've found is that there's a mindset piece for us as the reasons that business owners don't scale, but there's also a bit of know-how, and that's where the idea of a scale-up system comes in play. And you can see from the diagram the idea of you can just about see some pillars there, and thinking about it as a scale-up journey rather than just going into it as trying to think about how do we grow. And
I thought they were salt and pepper pots, actually.
Right.
From here, it's maybe not. Yeah. I mean, my eyes are famously inaccurate, especially if you're at Ellen Road. I call it wrong every single time. I don't know what can I say.
No, the idea is they're little pillars really, or stepping stones, milestones, and they've got a little ladder against each one. Okay. And the idea is that if we think about it as a scale up journey and those series of stepping stones, then what we can do is think, okay, well, we've got 3 to 5 employees. That's maybe we're on one of those stepping stones. Have we climbed to the top of that first? So we've got a business that's working really efficiently as it is before we start to think about making the next transition, which would be to 8 to 12 employees, and from there to 2025. So thinking about it each time as to what's the next stepping stone? Have we reached the top of the one that we're at now, so that we're launching from a high platform, if you like? And what do we need to do in between to avoid the typical troughs, the valleys that we get into, which we sometimes refer to as valleys of death in between.
Valleys of death. So basically you can trip yourself up and go out of business as you're reaching for the next level.
Absolutely. So you know that you're going to probably have to invest in people and systems. There's going to be costs. Your profitability is going to suffer as you go, almost certainly. Yeah. So how do you make sure that you minimize the amount of time that you're in that trough, but also minimize the depth of that trough, so that you don't cause yourself major problems with the business? So, valley of death may be a bit extreme, but certainly that certainly can happen. But often we get stuck where we're finding that we're tearing our hair out because there's not enough hours in the day. Our people are not doing what we want them to do efficiently and as we would want them, and the cash somehow is disappearing in the business. It's coming in at the top, but it seems to be more clients and coming in at the top, but it's not coming out the bottom anywhere. What's going on? And we get stuck in that valley.
It's a really interesting point. I from the kinds of businesses who've sort of lined up with your company, BizSmart, are they all more or less in the same sector, or do they come from many sectors? They'll have the same problem, which is about scaling up.
Yeah, they're all sorts of sectors, not any particular sector. They're all ambitious, and they're all we work typically with business owners with between 3 and 30 employees. That's typically the range of business owner that we work with, and find that partly that's because of the delivery that we do works best because we work with peer groups. We put people in what we call a smart board, where we're learning from each other at different stages of that scale up journey. And so we're kind of almost getting some non-executive directors together within each of our businesses, acting as that. So although all the principles and everything we do would work with any size of business, that's the kind of business that typically wouldn't have their own board, wouldn't have their own external advisors. So by having that system works well for them. So
just dig into this peer-to-peer support. So would you say this is one of the main sort of tenets of the entrepreneurial scale-up system? It's actually, peer helping peer.
Yeah. One of our mottos that we've kind of adopted is an old South African proverbial motto, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we're all about going further with each other and learning from each other. And it comes back to that mindset idea, but also the constant reinforcement and support. If we can make better decisions by bouncing ideas off of our peers, be challenged in the right way, but learn from mistakes they've made, from things they've got right, or on an ongoing basis, then we've got much more chance of going further and reaching where we want to get to over the long term.
You talked about scale up in terms of the number of people that you're employing.
Yes.
Can you scale without necessarily taking on the headcount numbers?
Yes, you can, and it's a great question. And when we look at scaling, the difference between scaling and growth is about the fact that you can actually scale the size of your business, whether it be the turnover and at a faster rate than your costs. Essentially, that's what we're looking at, and the distinction between just simply growing, where you might grow your cost base at the same sort of rate as your top line base. So you can. It's quite rare to be able to scale without being able to go up with the people, and certainly the kind of businesses that we work with and the approach that we have is based around building a business where we do need to take on people, and those stepping stones. Therefore, that's where the complexities come when we end up with more people. So if we're on our own, we can climb that ladder of success, if you like, for building a one-person business, and that's great, and we can be a nice, profitable business there. But if we want to start employing people, want to get to the stage where we've got 3 to 5 people, we've got to think about the business differently. It's a different kind of business that we need to.
How do you? You've said this now a couple of times about thinking about the business, and you almost like casting your mind forward. What kind of trance level state do you put people into to enable them to effectively do that? Because at the end of the day, you're saying, oh, it's easy enough to say, but how the heck do you put yourself into a place that says, well, you know, is there a practical way of thinking, right, I've got one person, I'll have 3. What does that mean?
Yeah.
How do you get that out of people or into people?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, we're not pushing people to do things that they wouldn't want to do. So we're not saying you have to scale up for the sake of it. So it's kind of choosing where it is that you want to be, and what's the next pillar, the next stepping stone along the way to get there. Yeah. We do a combination of things, and one of those is the inspiration from working with other people, because they might well say, okay, yes, you know what, they've got to that point. There's no reason why I couldn't get to that point. So we get that little bit of inspiration. But the thinking comes from, there's all sorts of aspects of thinking, but we get all of our business owners to go through a planning exercise, and we get them to think, yes, in the long term, but we really nail down a 3-year objective as to where we're trying to get to, and we kind of map that out on a 1-page. We've developed something we call the Smart Web. But it's a tool that we use to help to capture all of the thinking around what it looks like at that next stage where we want to get to in the 3 years, and then we bring it back. So it's a typical planning process. You'll be very familiar with this, both of you, where basically you're thinking longer term, but you bring it back to the short term. And once we've identified the kind of key elements of what need to be done over the next 3 years, we then bring that down to the 1 year, identify those 1 year critical paths, as we would call them, and then we'll map those out a little bit. So this, not in a really complicated way, a nice, simple and fun way to do it. But then the reinforcement aspect comes from the fact that we build in a rhythm within the business. Now, you talk about the next 100 days. We talk about 90 days, essentially. So it's the same sort of idea, because the idea is we're saying, okay, what do we want? What does the next 90 days look like? So we've said what the next 3 years look like. Great. But that's quite a long way in the future. Let's bring it right back through those steps that I've talked about, and let's identify the priorities for the next 90 days, and then let's work on those. And those priorities will include some of the longer term things, the bits that we want to knock off, the bits of the elephant, if you like, we want to eat this quarter, but also what's happened in the right now, because we may have done that planning exercise a few months ago and things may well have changed. I mean, there's more things that we need to consider.
Do you find that it's usually quite, once somebody's got their head into, they've done some planning, 90 days. Are you finding that people are, it's a bit like New Year's resolutions, that, maybe they started off with all good intent, but at the end of the 90 days, well, frankly, it's day 2 in realism. So basically, is it quite hard for people to actually achieve the goals that they're setting out for themselves?
Well, it can be, but that's actually one of the beauties of making it the 90 days. I think if you did a 3-year plan and you said, we want to be here in 3 years, then that's exactly what happens. It's like, as you said, it's like the beginning of the year when you want to get fit. So you sign up for the gym and you go for the couple of weeks in January, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So this comes back to, if you break it down to chunks that are meaningful, but that you can see and you can actually achieve in those 90 days. But then it comes to the rhythm. What do you do in those 90 days? Do you just set them once every 90 days and then just carry on with your business and have a look at them in 90 days time and see whether you achieve them or not? Or do you go, right, what's the rhythm that we're going to get into to make sure we keep on top of that and actually get this stuff done? So do we need to, what's our weekly rhythm? What's our monthly rhythm that we're sitting down with the right people and we're checking on, what progress have we made towards those 90-day priorities that we've set? And then if we're behind, let's adjust, or let's work out what we need to do to get back on track.
The thing is, Kevin, if I'd have been playing rhythm bingo, I'd have been 7 or more times, and I'd have won already. But the point is, there is something about that word, isn't there? Because it's quite a clever and it's almost a sinewy word. The bit that's sort of almost like connects different pieces in a particular melodic way. Is that the thing that you're aiming for? Is there some sort of magic to that word and the way in which it applies to the progress in 90 days?
I think there is a magic because it comes back to habits. It comes to habits, and there's much cleverer people than I, like Stephen Covey, that talked about the 7 habits of highly successful people. And this again comes back to the secret of success. So, like, what separates those business owners that scale from those that don't? It's not just the desire, it's not just the mindset, it's not just having great ideas and a great plan, but it's actually the execution of it. And that comes back to these great habits that you have all the time. And one of the ways that we do to really try and develop and reinforce those habits is by putting in a 90-day rhythm, supported by good weekly and monthly rhythm, maybe even daily with some businesses as well. And then you back that up with working with peers so that you've got that external viewpoint as well. And they also give you that little bit of accountability, because then you've committed to somebody else what you're going to do over those next 90 days. And you've got a little bit of that accountability from them. So it's that constant reinforcement then, as well as the overall structure as to what does it take to scale? What are some of the things we need to be thinking of from the strategy point of view, from managing our people point of view, from the managing the money side of things, and also from the execution, that delivery side. What are those things we need to think about?
So when you've got a business that's got, say, 3 people, as you say, that's your minimum, then the peer-to-peer is, well, you're talking about, they're all peers, aren't they? So there's, I guess you have to construct something with 3 people. But when you're talking about sort of 10 people or more, then, or did you say 3 to 30 or something people? I can't.
Well, the sort of the pillars that we would do, 3 to 5 is one of those early pillars. 8 to 12 is the next one we reference, and then 20 to 25 typically after that. Yeah. 25
people is a reasonably sized small business. So effectively, at that point, the peers they're already grouped in some form within that organization. How do you sort of create peer-to-peer learning or group working, if you like, within say a bigger business of 20 or more?
Okay, that's a really good point. So the peer groups that we put together, so the smart boards we put together, will typically have the business owner from a business. So they will be with peers from other businesses.
I see. From other businesses. Yep. I see. Okay, fine.
Yeah. So we'll put 5 or 6 really good, credible people together, business owners of their own businesses, and then we're getting the viewpoints from different perspectives, from different industries. So we will typically, in fact, always have businesses from different sectors. We won't have competing businesses within the same group. And one of the beauties of that then is it avoids us getting too narrow in our thinking and going, well, you know what, that's what this industry is about, and that you can't change it, whatever else. So we bring in perspectives from other people, removes that, also removes biases, because again, we've all got our natural biases. We talked about my background and your background. We've got ways of thinking about things that may be right, may not be right, but we will therefore have a gut feel and we'll come to a subconscious decision about something, whereas it may not be right. And it may be that we need somebody from a different field or different environment to go, hang on, Kevin, you know what? I don't think that's right. It doesn't work quite like that. Or this is what I've seen from my experience, and it's different from what you're saying. At least that then jolts us out of that comfort and that narrow-minded thinking.
Almost like a mastermind then that you've got there. It's almost like, and is that done in some? Sorry, you may have said, but I'm picking it up. But is that done in some sort of like a Facebook group or something like that?
It's more than a Facebook group. So we will meet, and they're generally virtual groups on Zoom, something like this. So we will meet typically remotely every month as a group. Once a quarter, we'll get together face to face, so physically, and that's when we will share more about our 90-day successes and our next 90-day plans. And then the months in between, then we'll be reinforcing that. But also, what people will be doing is bringing a challenge. So because it doesn't matter how good our planning is, there'll always be stuff that comes out that's different or we haven't thought of or whatever. So what we do is we encourage everybody to bring a challenge every month that the rest of us will then work on in a kind of action set learning. So we'll be challenging each other, asking questions about it. then maybe making recommendations, and then getting the business owner to sum up and commit to the actions that they're going to do. And then that again acts as that reinforcement. So you've got the sounding board, you've got the reinforcement, you've got a bit of inspiration from the fact that you're seeing the successes of some of your peers there as well, and realizing that actually maybe I could do that. So you've got a combination of those things. But it's essentially a mastermind group. We call it smart boards, and we operate them slightly differently. And we also bring in a theme every month from that scale up system, so that yes, there's an urgent thing we've got to solve here now as well, but also we need to be preparing our business for the next stage, for the next scaling. So is there something else we need to think about from maybe a strategic perspective, or maybe a managing our people perspective? Is there something we want to bring in as well?
I think the idea of bringing all these different perspectives together is a great one. If you think about the really successful recent businesses, it's because they've been disruptors.
Yep.
What happened in the taxi world? Uber came along because they challenged the basic assumptions of that market. What's happened in the hotel industry? Airbnb came along. They challenged some of the basic assumptions of the way things are done. So I really, really think that idea of getting out of the entrenched thinking and bringing people from different industries, different backgrounds together is a really powerful thing to do.
Yeah, it does work. It does work incredibly well, and it is that constant reinforcement as well, and that so it's lots of steps all the time, and we're making those cumulative effect of those steps make a big difference. But yes, thinking outside the box, and one of the things that we also, from a strategic aspect, get people to do is to really think about where they're getting their competitive advantage from. So we often talk about unique selling points, and I think probably every business owner has had rammed into them. You need a USP, you need a unique selling point. Certainly, if they're using a marketing agency or something like that, and that's absolutely right. But it's more than that. It's actually, what are we doing that gives us a little bit of a competitive advantage compared with other people out there? So what's the source of that? And we need to think about that as business owners, identify that. So even if we're an IT company and we're a managed service provider, and there are lots of them out there, and it's fairly straightforward as to what we think our business model is going to be, we need to think about, okay, what are we going to do a little bit differently that will give us an edge over the average managed service provider, and how are we going to protect that and create that as a source of competitive advantage? So, are we going to, and those come typically from two kind of key decisions. Are we going to compete in with different customers? Are we going to segment and go for, maybe we're going to be the best MSP provider for accountancy firms, right? And we're going to focus on that as our niche, and there's good reasons why we want to do that. We're going to build up our expertise in that because it's a good sector to be in, and so that's the positioning bit. But then the other is how are we going to really make that into, what's the tactics to win in that sector? So are we going to, because now we're focusing on accountants, can we provide IT support that is so much better for accountants than our competitors are providing, because we're focused on it, we understand accountants really well, and we can really put together a service that is brilliant, and therefore can we charge a bit more maybe for our managed service provision than the competitors will be, because the accountants will value our offer that much more, or conversely, or sometimes at the same time. But so that's our offer bit. But actually, maybe we can be much more efficient than everybody else as well. Maybe we've got some clever bit of technology or something that means we can provide that service at a lower cost to us than our competitors might be. So maybe we're more efficient in some way, which allows us to make more profits at the same price from somebody else. So if we think there about how do we create a competitive advantage, so we're not just another MSP, or even that we've got a that we might say this USP, this unique selling point that maybe we just say we're better, we've got yellow vans or something like that, or we wear a nice t-shirt, but actually that there's something that really gives us that competitive edge that somebody will pay a bit more for, and allow us to grow faster than our competitors.
It's fascinating stuff. Can I just take you back to peer-to-peer? Is it only at the leader level?
No, No, we also will have typically maybe number twos within the business that the business owners are looking to develop as well, because one of those aspects, one of the reasons again that business owners fail to scale is that we find it difficult to transition from the leader follower model, if you like, where we're driving it all and we're basically managing a team of people and driving it all, to creating other leaders within the business that can then take that business beyond just what we can do. And therefore, by having sometimes the number two in a business on the peer groups really helps to develop leaders within that business.
I just love the way in which you're answering the questions. Somebody would, somebody would probably think that you've got your own podcast, but it turns out you do. It's called Scale Up Radio Podcast. What's the radio bit about that? I mean, are you actually on? Is it just a sort of? Because some people think that I'm on the radio. Somebody in my family thinks I've heard him on the radio. Well, no, you haven't, love. But I mean, at the end of the day. So have you just put radio on there?
Smart speaker, Graham.
Say again?
It all comes out the same smart speaker.
Well, I suppose in your house it does. You talk to this thing called whatever her name is in the corner.
Please don't mention her at the moment; she'll interrupt.
Imagine that. So tell us about Scale Up Radio Podcast. Then what's that about?
Yeah, so as you say, it's not real radio. It's not not going out on the airwaves in quite the same way.
So what you're saying is you're lying, then, Kevin. So we've got two Kevin liars here. What's going on? All right. So I get
drummed into you as a management consultant. You see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, but okay. So it's a Scale Up Radio. Do you have guests on? Is that what you do?
Yes, we do, and essentially, it's the idea again is that we can learn from others and the experiences. So what we look for are guests that have got a bit of a story. They've maybe got to the point where they've got at least 5 employees, but maybe a few more. But not, we're not after the next Bill Gates or some huge. Yeah, incredible person. We're after real life people with real life stories that can take us through some of the experiences that they've had, and can explain maybe the things that they've got right, some of the things that they've got wrong, the learnings that they've had, so that we can all learn from them. And we have some fascinating guests on. Some have been on TV and been on Dragon's Den and done that kind of thing. But others simply have just, built a regional business with a successful business with a few people in it. But again, they've got just as much lessons that we can all learn from in that case.
I'm delighted that you're doing that, and it's more power to those people providing podcasts and hopefully helpful information, which we try and do, but it's usually down to the guests. And I think this time we might just get over the threshold. I think you're doing reasonably well. But the nice thing is that you've developed this business. 10 years is a long time. So from your start to where you are now, the biggest lessons that you've had in BizSmart are.
Yeah, and I think they all come in, don't they, to our system as well, because we're living it, and that's part of the point. We're not trying to pretend that we're some clever person, expert that's more intelligent or got all the ideas that nobody else has from our ivory tower and preaching to people. We're rolling up our sleeves and doing it as well. So yes, we're going through the same sort of challenges that we're taking other business owners to. So it's great for us. I don't know about you, but from doing the podcast, but also from running the smart boards that we do, the mastermind type groups, I and my team learn as much from our guests and from our members as they learn from us, I'm sure, because so we're constantly improving. So I think one of those things, and smart boards came out of that, but one of those was the checking in with other business owners and on a regular basis and learning from others and realizing that we never stop, we never stop learning. There's always good ideas and things. So let's not be too insular. But I think the singular biggest thing is that 90-day rhythm. It wouldn't really matter if it was 100 days. That's exactly the same sort of thing. But that rhythm where we take time to pause and reflect on what's going well, what's not going so well, and what we need to do differently, and what the real priorities are for that next relatively short-term period. But as I say, it's still long enough that you can pick off a fairly big, meaty project if you want to. So that constant improvement.
I really, really like this idea of the sort of a virtual and real mastermind, sort of plonk you on the chair. What are your issues? You get, I don't know, 5 minutes, tell us what the story, and then everybody else is thinking about you. And that as a sort of an engine of learning must be fantastic. I mean, Kevin and I, over the last, I don't know, 7 years doing this podcast, have learned huge amounts of stuff. I mean, often it's in one ear out the other, but at the end of the day, some of it sticks. Particularly with Kevin, he's a much brighter person. He's sort of.
But no, you're right, Graham. A huge amount of stuff. I mean, it's 360 episodes.
Yeah.
And we've covered a huge range of topics. Got some great ideas. Tried some ourselves. Yeah. And in my other podcast as well, talking to a different type of person. Talking more in the corporate finance world, in the world of the CFO, learning loads and loads in there as well. And there's one interesting observation here. We were talking a few minutes ago about the mastermind for the business owner. Well, now within Growth CFO, we're quite often creating the mastermind for the business owner's number two. And those number two roles can be just as lonely a place as the business owner role, because you're supposed to be the expert in your particular domain, but you've got nobody else around you to bounce some of those ideas off. It's the same sort of thing. I think the power of those mastermind type groups is really considerable.
And can I ask, Kevin, how long did it take you to get to a place that you had enough traction in your business and for that matter clients to do the masterminds, or did you populate it with your mates initially and that's fair enough, and it's a reasonable way of getting there, but eventually you have to have real businesses with their own perspectives? Straight away, or is it?
That's an interesting question. The idea of the smart boards, of the mastermind groups, came relatively early on in the business. So when we set up, we started the business in 2012, had our first mastermind group in 2013, and so I'd started working with some clients, got some good clients, and came. I don't quite remember how came up with the idea of starting a mastermind group, but did.
Good idea.
And so that wasn't very far into the business, and I think was a good point at which started to really see the power of that, and that's what really started to then drive our thinking. And in fact, just to illustrate the power of these groups, that group I set up with six business owners in 2013. It is still running with 5 of the original 6.
Oh wow!
Right, and the journey that those 5 have been on, it's varied, but it's significant in all cases. One's gone from having 4 or 5 employees in a business that was entirely kind of hand to mouth, to now a recurring revenue business. They've got 25 people. They've had 2 rounds of investment along the way, and they're really on a strong trajectory of that business.
And that's actually a really interesting point, because we have other guests looking at bringing money into businesses, and in that case, where you might have found, and probably you didn't find this, but would you be inclined to bring in an expert into that sort of mastermind group that would actually facilitate the learning?
Yes, we will not. We will not pretend to be experts in every single aspect of a business. So we will bring in the right people for that. We will make the introductions essentially. So again, like you, I'm sure with all the great work that you're doing, you've got some really good people that you trust, and so that's what we would do in that case, is bring them in. So there's another aspect to the mastermind groups as well, is that it's not just group work. We also in between have a one-to-one catch up every month with all of the clients, and at that then we can tease out some of the extra things that maybe need to come out, make any introductions that we need to do as well. So yes, we would bring in the experts from that. But it's interesting, going back to you were saying about have we developed over the years? The idea of the smart boards, mastermind groups, came fairly early on, and we knew that we were focusing on scaling up and building value. That's essentially what we're about. It's not scaling up for scaling up's sake. It's actually building a business that's resilient and got residual value to it, so that when we decide to stop at some point, we don't just have to shut the doors on it. There's something of value in there, and we knew that from the start, and that helped us to develop the structure. So then, by working with business owners and thinking about it, and what are the challenges that business owners face at different stages of their journey? How can we overcome those challenges? What do they need to know? That enabled us to then start to pull it all together, if you like, in a structure. That took time. That's the thing that took time. And although we had the bones of it and the idea of it fairly early on, I'd say that took until year 8. Until we really got that. The book has only just come out, but the book is based on an earlier iteration of the structure and the system that we're putting together for business anyway.
So if somebody, Kevin, buys the book or gets it in some way, the entrepreneurial scale-up system, and it's probably how have you published it? Is it self-published or is it on Amazon or whatever?
It is self-published, but it's on all of the places that you would want to get it, like Amazon. Yep.
Okay. So we'll put a link to the book in the show notes. But basically, one of the things what will that book help somebody who's I love what I'm hearing here. What will that book help with? Yeah.
So the first thing is it's designed to be the kind of book that you keep alongside with you, and you make notes in, and you scribble, you add post-it notes into it, whatever you want to do. So you mark things. So in an ideal world, we'd like people to just read through it, get a flavor of the whole thing, but then go back and go, right, you know what, that's something I want to come back to and do in my business. So what it does is it breaks down in a non-theoretical way, a really practical way, lots of tips and things that you can do. And it starts by, let's look at that rhythm. Let's get that 90-day rhythm in place. And then, okay, we got that in place. What are some of the other things we need to think about? So if we're, and we use some of the research that we've done with business owners at different stages and go, well, okay, typically here, then this might be one of the challenges that you're likely to be facing. So let's make sure we get that in place. So what it will do is it will give people that overview of actually the know-how, the thinking about how we should go about doing it, but then the practical things to come along and what to do next in a way, and then take it from there.
This feels very much like a book not to buy on your Kindle. You need the hard copy. Scribble in it.
Yeah, well, yes, you can do. I mean, there is an Audible audio version of it as well, available on Audible. But yes, it for me, I'm more of a paper and I like to be able to hold things and scribble in things. Although I do use, I have got to love something called a Remarkable. I don't know whether you've come across that, but essentially it's electronic notebook. But you can download PDFs and books and whatever, and then you can scribble on them electronically, and then you've got that electronic file of it as well.
Something like that with an iPad. I
yes.
with a pen. But having said that, I know I've seen it advertised quite a bit. So stuff. Yeah. I really like the idea that you're giving people the tools to be able to do that. And one of the things I picked up from your website, which is, by the way, it's bizsmart.co.uk.
Yes.
So now, just as it sounds, BIZ, smart, and the thing about one of the things you've got in there is an opportunity for people to take out a franchise.
That's true. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that. Is that a recent sort of innovation, or is that something that you had in mind from, year 1 or 2?
It's recent in the fact that we've recently started offering franchises. Again, when we were thinking about our scale-up journey, we're on a mission to help to increase the numbers of business owners that can scale that want to, because there's only about 4% of businesses in this country that scale beyond 10 employees, right? So 96% of all businesses have fewer than 10 employees, and we want to know why that is, and so we're on that mission. So we want to try and impact as many businesses as we can, which is why we've got things like Scale Up Radio, and we've got the book now to try and impact and help as many businesses as we can. And the franchising is another way to do that, because that enables us to then have a really good person that can work locally with business owners, and then really increase the impact that we can have in that way.
I mean, so part of your outreach to ourselves and coming on this podcast is effectively to sort of share the BizSmart way, as it were, but also perhaps with half an eye on maybe having I mean, you're down in the sort of Midlands there, but if you got somebody with a Scottish accent between Edinburgh and Glasgow, they might have a handful of businesses that would want to scale as well. Probably quite a few.
Yeah, and no, that's great. That's very kind of you to ask about that. And the important thing, what we're looking for again are people that kind of share that passion of helping business owners, and they love business, right? Yeah. But then if they want, because the coaching world's quite lonely as well, right? Yeah. It's quite difficult. Lots of people that want to be a coach. Yeah. So what we're offering with that is a methodology to find clients, because we have got my dog barking in the background. I'll probably say,
I thought it was Kevin's, to be honest with you.
For once, it's not my dog barking.
No,
yeah.
I've threatened that I'll bring my budgies in here, and then that will really throw it. But anyway,
the wonders of all of the homeworking, isn't it? I think we probably just had an Amazon delivery, and the dogs got
fair enough.
But why is it that Amazon delivery men have a sixth sense of when you're recording a podcast?
Yeah,
well, they're clever people. So the idea of the franchise, then, if somebody is actually interested, Kevin, they would probably just get in touch with you, and you'd then. It's almost like here's a sort of a system that you would want them to follow. And I don't know, tell us a little bit more. Is it a difficult thing to adopt? You're looking for a particular type of individual?
Type of individual, yes. So again, that passion, that really interest in business, but they need to be credible. They need to have been a leader of some sort in their own right. That doesn't necessarily mean they need to have been a business leader with huge success behind them, but they need to have done something significant in their life so that people will listen to them. Essentially, if they're facilitating a group of great business owners, those business owners have got to think that person's credible.
Yes.
So they need to have that, and then we can help them then with actually the systems. So how do you find clients? What are you going to do with them so that you come prepared to these sessions? You're not feeling you're always on the back foot, that they could ask you anything, and you've got to know everything about everything all the time. But how do you make that work? How do you build something so that you're giving your business owner clients real value, and they want to stay with you over a long period of time, not just do a one-off project and then disappear. So all sorts of things in there that we can help overcome some of the typical problems that somebody trying to set themselves up as an advisor to business owners might typically face.
We should really congratulate you as well, because you were the Brilliance Award winner. Which is apparently open to about 3 businesses in the Midlands.
That's about it, I think. Yes,
I'm only kidding. It's well done. You're the Business Brilliance Awards 2022. That's pretty special, isn't it?
Yeah, that was amazing. So that was a really big event down in London, and yes, it was I was very surprised, and actually the business itself, won the category, and yes, they also recognized me from that business leader point of view. But I think what it was about there is what we're doing to help business owners to scale and build valuable businesses, rather than necessarily something about me specifically.
I love your passion for, like you say, the recognition that only 4% of businesses will scale to beyond 7 figures. So and it's always been I've had business ideas that should get me to beyond 7 figures, but it drives you. But it's the kind of rollout of that, and how do you get there? That driving you is pretty impressive.
Well, thank you very much. It's and I think that's one of the other things that every business owner, if you want to succeed, you've got to come back to being single-minded at some point. And in a way, in a way, because if we go into business and think, oh, well, I'll give this a go for a bit, but if it doesn't really work out, I can go back to that job or something like that. Then you probably will end up going back to the job. Whereas if you go, you know what, that's what I want to achieve. That's a mission that I'm on, and I want to build a business around that and help people doing whatever it is that we're doing. And if that drives you enough, then you'll when you come across the inevitable hurdles that you're going to come across, you'll find a way over, around, under, whatever, and you'll find a way to do it, rather than going, oh, what, you know what, I'll just turn around and go back the other way.
Kevin sometimes, my Kevin, he basically sometimes says, Graham, why don't I get that chance to ask that really important question? So now's the chance, Kevin.
And as the chance, what's that really important question? I'll tell you, I have actually got a really important question here. And one of the things that we frequently find is we're talking to guests who have made what we call the corporate escape. You know? They've been working in big corporate, like you and I did, and indeed you did, Kevin.
Yes,
both management consultants. Is this franchise model something that would be right for a corporate escapee?
Yes, absolutely. Could well be somebody that's got that experience of a bigger business, but it has a passion maybe for the smaller business. But I will say that's one of the things that took me quite a long time to learn. There's a big difference between working in big corporate, as I'm sure you guys
absolutely
understand. And even just in the language that you use with small and medium sized businesses, it's a very different world from the corporate world. And coming in with MBA speak, it doesn't really cut it.
It doesn't. And actually, in some ways, it's an inhibitor. I was actually going to field that question, because in the past, I've read a lot of people think, small business MBA, you don't really need one, and all the rest of that. And I've had that thrown at me. The big thing from my experience was the confidence, and some of the models that I've been able to successfully apply, at least in terms of thinking style. But actually putting MBA on my business card or in some, no, it's just it just doesn't.
That's an interesting one, because I'm constantly talking to finance leaders, and our sweet spot is finance leaders, probably in SME type of organizations. And the principles that would go with the MBA, would go with the management consultancy background, all apply. But if you start talking about them in those terms, even to a CFO, it does not work. You've got to bring the theory down into some practical steps. Here's what you actually do. And learning to do that and get away from the PowerPoint slide that explains all the theory and just hopes that they get it. It's a big change.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do through the book, is to combine some of the great theory that picked up from working in big corporates, but also the consulting, also the MBA, but also other tools that are out there. I mentioned Stephen Covey, but there's some great thinking out there already. It's not a case that you, as a business owner, you couldn't find the answer to many questions on the internet. It's more a case of actually finding the one which one do I do? Because there's so much out there. So try to synthesize that down, as you say, into those practical things that we can all then do and make a difference.
Kevin, you've been an absolutely brilliant guest on the next 100 Days podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed for the opportunity. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, Graham, I really enjoyed that conversation. And let's clarify one thing. We talked about 100 days and 90 days on various occasions. I think we're talking the same thing. And I would say that our idea of the next 100 days is, if you've got a problem, take 10 days to do some thinking about it, and then spend the next 90 days getting on and fixing it. But once you've got into a rhythm, it is every 90 days do something.
I think our original, I think if I go back to to the 100 days. I think it was always based on plan, do, review. So basically, the idea was, for the sake of argument, 5 days to plan, 90 days to do, and 5 days to review, and it just iterates then. So, but you could do the same. You could do the same with 90 days. It's just a question of how much time you spend doing. So it doesn't really matter, but it's just our way of doing it. And I think 100 makes more sense in some ways than 90. But I mean, 90 is 3 days, and it's a quarter, and all the rest of that. So.
But I think two interesting things coming out there, and they're both around the franchising idea.
Yeah.
Number one, if you really are going to grow your business, now you want to take it in a different region, a different territory, whatever. Franchising is a great way. Find somebody who can use your IP and wrap it up in a certain way so they can't steal your IP, but let them use it in a territory or a group of people that you know nothing about. And we ought to explore that further on the podcast. And talk
I think that the issue that Kevin Brent will face and probably has already thought through is scaling himself. I mean, because effectively it's a good model. I really like the peer-to-peer thing. I like it that they've got more than one tier. I wonder whether or not he could go even further with, almost like the freshman, so there's not quite an indoctrination, but basically the opportunity for them to learn really rapidly in the right way. So there seems to be a lot of opportunities there to grow that business model, but using the peer-to-peer, using the mastermind, etc. Those are the sorts of things. I really liked what he was doing, and the fact, we haven't really dug into the specifics, but there's obviously a lot of practical help and self-help that basically you can do.
I'd say the other interesting thing is, think about this as a potential franchisee. Why would you do it? And there's always been something in the back of my mind that I've looked at various franchises and I said, well, why would I buy the franchise? I can do that myself.
Well, that's true, Kevin. I think you could do that, but the fact is, not everybody would be able to.
Think about a few of the things that Kevin said there. Yeah. The framework that they're using now, the models that they're using, took them 8 years to build.
And that's the reason.
You go out there, you've left corporate, you say, I can be a business coach. Fine. You put your board out. And say, I'm Kevin Appleby, the business coach now, and I've tried this.
Yeah.
You might pick up a client, you might pick up a second client, and you're doing some of it by the seat of your pants. You haven't got a framework to work with these people with. You're kind of inventing it a bit as you go along. It's great. You can do some of that. But wouldn't it be a better position if you could pick up on some of these frameworks straight away on day one? You've got a structure to take the person through. You've got a bit of marketing support. Lead generation is a huge, huge problem. But if you've got a bigger engine that's already got some traction that you can hook yourself on the back of, got to be a huge advantage. And I know after we finished recording, I said to Kevin, the franchise that you're putting out sounds interesting. I think if I was winding the clock back 10 years, I might seriously have thought about something like this. Mm-hmm. And I'd say, with that kind of hindsight, if you are thinking about escaping corporate, or you've started off on your own journey in that coaching advisory type business, think long and hard about where can you get to on your own versus where can you get to on the back of picking up a good framework like the one Kevin's offering.
And I wouldn't imagine you're sacrificing too much of the upside. So from that point of view, it's a reasonably safe journey into entrepreneurship, but one that you'd learn an awful lot and would have almost transferable skills. But I think, that's something that people can do. We will put a link to Bismart on the show.
And again, Graham, you talked about sacrificing some of the upside. Well,
that's what
I've got a view that says even if you sacrifice 50% of the upside, 50% of something that's quite big is probably a lot more than 100% of something that fails to grow very much at all.
Well, that's also true. So I think today has been another really interesting podcast, this time with Kevin Brent from Bismart. Today, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.